G'day, this is George talking. 14th of March, no, we're past the April 2026. Today's my message of hope. Singapore in 1994. I was on a train home with a few colleagues from the civil engineering company I've been working at for the better part of the year. One of them, she worked in the auditing department, leaned over and mentioned to us, almost casually, that a bonus was coming. I like bonuses. Do you as well? And this bonus was a real one. I don't know what the numbers was, but something in the way she said made it lean forward. Okay. Well, when I found out it was 8 months' salary, for me that is, I sat there running the numbers. Ooh, pretty good, right? 8 months. In Singapore, with every temptation the city had to offer, well, there were a few things calling for that money, but I bought none of them. That's how good I was. I knew I was heading back to Australia eventually, and I knew that money needed to mean something when I got there. Just as a background, the company announced it was a 1 year's bonus for everyone. It was just pro rata, that's why I got 8 months. Okay, yeah. Obviously I banked the money, all of it, and lived off my regular wages as if nothing had changed. That's how I was. I was quite disciplined. But what stayed with me, more than the money itself, yeah, was the feeling that came with it. I was new, you see. I hadn't even been there for a full year. And the company looked at every single person in that building and said, "You matter. What you did here is worth something. Here you go." Now, I've worked in enough places since to know how rare that is. I mean, it's not every day you get a 1 year bonus, right? Now, here's where I have to be honest with you. Last week on this channel, I told a story of a woman who gave more than 40 years of loyalty. Her loyalty service to the bank she worked for. Now, you may have seen that. And you may have seen that she received at the end of those 40 plus years, flowers and a lapel pin to say thank you. Let me say that again, 40 years and a lapel pin. And after that video went up, a viewer commented, the viewer commented asking what she was actually expecting. I don't know this woman. Well, a generous gift isn't an employment contract, so technically that's true. But I want to push back on something in that question, because I think we've drifted so far from generosity as a cultural norm that, receiving the bare minimum now feels reasonable. It's expected even. And anything beyond that feels like an anomaly worth putting in the news. How about that? Yes, we've accepted that. And most of us haven't even noticed we've done it. Well, if these questions about money, generosity and faith are the ones you want to keep exploring, do me a favour. Hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, and share these videos far and wide. Sorry for painting down up a little bit on the hill. You know, every time I've got to give you a Bible verse, so here it comes. Have a listen to what Solomon wrote. This is Proverbs chapter 11, verses 24 to 25. Okay, so King Solomon wrote, "One gives freely, yet grows all the richer. Another withholds what he should give, and only suffers want. Whoever brings blessings will be enriched, and one who waters will himself be watered." Let's check that out later on. Okay, well, before we go further, I know what some of you are thinking. Not every organisation can hand out $15 million. True, yeah. And that's not what Solomon is saying though. He's not writing a business formula. He's recording an observation across a lifetime of watching how people actually live. Alright, the kind of person, is the kind of organisation that tends to flourish over time. Let's rewind the clock a bit. Talking about February 2012. You may have seen it on the news. A Victorian company called the Grenda Corporation was sold. It's big news, right? Ken Grenda, original founder, was 79 years old. The company had been running since 1945. Yeah, started actually as a milk run in outer Melbourne back in 1925. That's more than a century ago. So he started with a dozen buses by the end of the Second World War. Then 3 states he was operating in. 1,300 buses later. Pretty impressive. So close to $400 million when the sale finally went through. Went through a company called Ventura. And Ken Grenda took $15 million of that and handed it to his 1,800 staff. Well, he divided among that. Bit of it. So it turns out the average payout was $8,500. Some receive up to $30,000 based on the time served in the companies. It's interesting how the workers thought the banks had made an error when they checked their accounts. And when they asked why, Ken said, a business is as good as its people. And our people are fantastic. Boy, I would have liked to see the smile on his face when he said that. Now, then he mentioned, almost in passing, that one employee had been in the same job at Grenda for 52 years. Talk about loyalty, hey? 52 years. Obviously, Ken noticed it. He said it out loud, and then he made sure the person knew they'd been seen. I remember I used to catch Grenda buses around Melbourne without giving them a second thought. Just a bus company, right? They were just part of the city, really. Now, when I think about those buses, I think about the culture quietly running underneath the whole operation. Because nobody stays in the same job for 52 years for the wage alone. Unbelievable. They stay because of something about how a place makes them feel. And here's what moves most about this story, okay? Ken Grenda distributed $15 million on his way out. So again, I said the company was already sold. He wasn't buying loyalty he needed later. He wasn't. He wasn't managing a reputation because there was nothing left to gain. But he looked back at the people who had built something alongside him and decided in his heart they deserved to feel it. And that is what Solomon was pointing at 3,000 years ago. Yeah? Just so I can say again, one gives freely yet grows all the richer. Now, I heard Richard Branson say once, and I think it was in a podcast, he said, look after your staff well and they will look after your customer. Perhaps that was in his book. Okay, so that's a secular observation, but the principle underneath it is ancient, isn't it? And right now we're living in a moment where it's almost daily news. We're talking about companies letting people go, restructuring, redundancies, announcements written in corporate language that's designed to sound like the weather, like something that simply happened as if nobody actually decided it. You know, I beg to differ. And in the environment, the question of how we treat people, it doesn't become academic. It actually lands close to home for a lot of us, doesn't it? Friends, this is the part I don't want you to miss. Yeah, you don't need $15 million to decide that people around you matter. Does it? You don't need to be selling a business. The generosity Ken Grenda showed was shaped long before the sale. I'm sure by a set of values, a way of seeing people, a conviction that what they gave was worth honouring. And that starts in the ordinary Tuesday when nobody's watching, or Monday, or Thursday, Friday, right? It starts in small decisions that nobody puts in a press release. No fanfare behind it. So the man who spent 52 years in that same job at Grenda showed up decade after decade, through boom years and lean ones, and at the end someone noticed, which is Ken. Not with a lapel pin. I want you to hear this. One day each one of us will stand before God and give account of what we did with what we were given. So it's not just the money, but it's the time, the position, the ability to make people feel seen or invisible. It's the moment when generosity was possible and we choose otherwise. I hope you choose generosity. What will you say then when you meet God? That you held on to everything you could? That you let the people around you wonder whether that mattered while you reached out for more? Think about it. Jesus watched a rich young ruler walked away once. The man had kept the commandments, lived righteously, done all the visible things well. He really did. But when the moment of release came, he couldn't do it. Because Jesus challenged him, right? And Jesus watched him go. Because there's one thing Jesus asked him to do, to let go of his things. And he wasn't willing. Well, Ken Grenda walked away too, but differently. Again, one gives freely, it grows all the richer. My friends, when God looks at what you did with what he gave you, what he will see. Thanks for being with me today. It's home time. I'll see you around tomorrow. Bye-bye.